Hey, welcome to Tana Central, the podcast where we talk all things Tana, our favorite productivity app. Just wanted to let you know that if you're watching this on YouTube, usually our episodes do have video, but you know how it goes, technical difficulties. So this is gonna be an audio only episode. So this is a good time to announce that we are now available to listen on Spotify, and soon we'll take over all the podcasting apps. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can definitely expect next episode to have video again. But until then, I hope you enjoyed today's show. So yeah, welcome back. How are you, Nick?
I am great.
So yeah, what's up? Oh, did you see the new update? It was really cool. It was a really cool thing going on.
There are several. Yeah. So there's the new kind of creation method.
Yep. I believe it's called. Let me take a look here in Tana. It's just a create new button on the sidebar, which I find it really cool. Yeah, I was testing it. So it's just a way, like for anyone that hasn't seen it yet, it's just a way in which you can have a button now on the sidebar to just create a new node, like the name shows. But this goes straight into your Tana daily page. But it's equivalent as if you were to just like create a new one and zoom into it, right? It just makes it a lot nicer to just, create something quickly. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. And where I'm at is like, whenever you've been using something for a long time, you get accustomed to certain things. So for me, this is like, I don't know if I like this personally, but like I'm trying it out right now and I'm like, okay, yeah, I could see how maybe this could grow on me. So we'll see. Like the really nice thing is having access at a click of the button to, my commonly used tags, which clearly I'm looking at them right now. And so clearly the Tana system understands which of my tags I use more often than others. So yeah, I don't know. I think this gets into kind of the discussion we had, I think it was a couple weeks ago about, do you prefer to just have like everything you do by touching the keyboard, or do you prefer to use the mouse or something? And so I think this is something that's definitely much more geared toward a new or light user of Tana, not necessarily a power user.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice. Like, again, the button just being accessible, I think is pretty cool because it is a lot more user-friendly in a sense. Some people that might not be very familiar yet with the daily page, they might be a bit confused of like, oh, how do I structure this? But if they just see create new node is as simple as, Apple Notes or anything like that, where they just create a new one and ready to go, and they're zoomed into the daily page. So very user-friendly, like you say, maybe not the most power user feature, although I did see a long discussion and there were a couple of power users really trying to customize things already. So there might be some hidden features that I haven't explored yet.
There's the other aspect. I think they must have been there must be tied together somehow in the code, because the other thing that came out, I think, is related. Like it has to do with AI, but it's like improvements on the like suggested fields. And also you can have optional fields, not just hidden fields, but optional fields. That is something I'm really looking forward to playing with more.
Yeah, okay, I saw that briefly, but I haven't tried it yet. So can you describe it a bit if you understand it better than I do?
I need to play with it more. But
no worries.
From the screenshots that I saw, basically so currently, or up to until this point, you have a bunch of fields. And you can mark some of them as hidden unless they're filled in or unless they're not the default or something like that. But now you can also have optional fields. Which are
under certain conditions.
They don't have to even exist on a particular instance.
Okay. I like that. That's cool. That kind of ties to the thing that we were talking about, before the episode started. That you were talking a lot about the organization of super tags and fields. So yeah, if you want to link it there, that's a cool trail of thought to follow. Yeah,
you're right. When most people think of fields, they're putting fields into super tags, and I thought this for the longest time too. I think, that field is there, so anything I define for that field is in the context of that super tag only. But fields technically exist as a separate entity all on their own. And so when you have a field named status and you have it, like you mark it as required and you set the status, or you set the visibility for it and all these things, that applies for wherever you put it. If you put that status field in 5 different super tags, then those same settings apply for
Right.
all of those versions of field, the status field in those super tags.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I've always really liked to perceive the idea that a field is tied to a super tag. I mean, that's how I always used it, and I do know what you mean that a field technically stands by itself. But I believe that just causes a lot more trouble than it solves, right? I think by default they should all always be tied to the super tag, at least as a preference, and having an optional setting or feature to tie it to other things. But the fact that they're independent, I just find it too confusing as well. And I think beginners might just be really confused about that. So I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my recommendation, if you are a beginner, or if you assume you don't think you're ever going to get super deep into Tana, either way, like just ignore everything that I said and pretend that that's not how Tana works, because you'll get along just fine without understanding that technical level. But anyone in that middle point, or if you're going really deep into Tana, sooner or later, you're going to discover that, because you're going to realize that you're changing things in different places when you thought you were just making some changes in one place.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, and something that I really learned from you is just like that. I believe you have a deeper understanding of like how to organize a hierarchy of fields, super tags, and so on. So yeah, just transitioning a little bit in the organization of super tags for anyone that is starting to get a bit more advanced into Tana, and they already feel like, oh, they don't know if they already have a super tag for this. How do they search it? How do they organize it all? Like, break it down real quick. How do you keep track of all of your super tags? Just to learn a bit from you.
Yeah, and also it's not just for keeping track of things. It's also, I use it for kind of thinking and doing. So there's different stages. And when I'm just kind of like starting out with, I want to have like a ticket tag and I want to have a project tag or something, like I'm just making tag and tagging things. I'm not even organizing at all. But then I get to a point where I'm pretty confident about what I'm doing. And I know that I want to have I have an idea for the organization, but I'm not quite sure. That's when I really start organizing in the schema. And I list things out just in kind of the list, the outliner mode, which is kind of tricky because you technically can't indent under, I forget which it is, like under the definition of the super tag or whatever.
Right.
But if you put a child node under that, then you can indent. It's something weird like that.
Right.
But anyway, that's what I do. That's kind of an intermediate step. And that helps me not only organize and keep track of things, but think out loud, so to speak. Like I can visually see, oh, okay, this is the hierarchy, the tree. There's something that should be right here. Okay, I need another super tag. Or, oh my God, this is really an extension, but I'm not extending anything. I need to add that there, and ties in the relations to each other. Eventually, once I've nailed all those things down, then I leverage the tabs and the sidebar to have like a really complex organization of, things that do, they're related to work management, things that are related to more PKM, things that are more this type of thing. And then the specific subcategories within those of how they function and the particular hierarchical trees.
Right. Great point. What are you saying?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, and it was an interesting point. We were talking about this like a day or two ago, and you, in one of your messages, you called it productivity procrastination. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, productive procrastination.
Yes. And I realized that that's how it started with me. Like it was kind of technically a waste of time, but I felt I was compelled to do it. And then I realized, oh, there's actually a reason. So yay me, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously fall for those things all the time. I kind of distinguish productive procrastination into two areas. One is like something that is completely unnecessary and just a bonus. And the other one is the type of thing of like, oh, okay, I would like this workflow to be faster, so I'm going to spend 10 hours making it faster so that in the future is faster. Both of those are quite productive procrastination, right? But yeah, like I actually haven't really taken the time to do what you're describing, which is organizing all of my super tags and having the hierarchies. When I did try to do that in the past, I, like you said, I did realize that indenting super tags within each other is a mess. So one thing that I used as a workaround was just like the references of the super text. But I don't know what you think about that. Like, is there any disadvantage to doing it with references versus the original super text?
I don't remember if I actually had a good reason. I think it's because I didn't want two locations.
Yeah,
One where the things live and one where I'm kind of organizing things. I wanted to
right.
organize where they're in the same place that they're living.
Yep.
But that is an idea that I, could maybe just have like a pure just straight list in one area,
Right.
but then I organize it in another. But I don't like that, I guess. Even if it would work, something in me just recoils.
Yeah, fair enough. Is it something that you would recommend to beginners or not really? And you just
No.
recommend they jump
No,
straight into
I
schema?
would. I would the opposite of recommend. I would tell
Yeah.
people, do not do that when you're starting out. Avoid doing that.
The whole thing, like whether it's reference or the original, you just don't recommend the whole thing at all. Right,
Yep,
right,
if
right.
you're just starting out, just be messy. Purposefully.
Yeah, for sure.
Do not try to achieve perfection in anything when you're first starting out in Tana.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's such a great point because otherwise it's so easy to get overwhelmed, and all of that work that you end up doing, you might not even enjoy the fruits of your labor if you just are so meticulous about trying to get everything perfect from the start. You might just be deterred from like, oh, you know what, this whole thing takes so much time, right? It's just better to see the fun aspects of using Tana at first and just seeing like the benefits straight away rather than trying to set up your castle perfectly for the future. You can always redefine things and re-improve things as you go. I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Totally. And perhaps even most importantly, if you come into Tana and you immediately try to make perfect systems and everything, because Tana is so different, it's so unique in how it operates and how you as a user need to think about working in Tana, you're gonna transfer old ways of doing things from different tools that aren't really going to work that well in Tana, and you're going to stumble into mental roadblocks and even technical roadblocks, and you're just going to be stuck, constantly hitting your head against the wall, wondering,
Yeah.
why can't I get it to work like I want it to work? Because you're trying to use Tana like as if it's Jira, or you're trying to use Tana as if it's Obsidian or something. That's a huge problem.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a problem in general whenever anyone migrates from one app to another. But it's particularly, I think it applies a bit more to Tana just because Tana is a new paradigm. Like, I can't think of any other tool that really integrates all of these ideas in one. Like, yeah, obviously Tana takes, some inspiration from tools that come before it, like Workflowy, Run Research, Logseek. But it does innovate quite heavily with the idea of super tags, which then creates like this database structure more related to Notion, Airtable, but all in one place, right? So I agree. Like Tana is a much better way to do things, in my opinion, and it just brings new ways to think. That if you're too tied to the old ways, you won't really enjoy the benefits of it, right?
Yep, totally. Yeah, I was trying to explain Tana to someone that I was in a meeting with earlier this week, and sometimes I really have trouble because I cycle around different ways of describing it. And
Right.
what I ended up gravitating towards in this conversation was basically explaining that it is just magical. And like it sounds like I'm just going over the top and trying to sell it, but like really that's the truly unique part of Tana is if you set things up well, then you magically you take some notes, apply a tag or two, and then later on if you're ever doing something with that's related to those notes, they just kind of appear where you need them to be. And so that's completely different from like trying to set up the second brain system in Evernote or
Right.
something. Completely different paradigms of how
Yep.
to work, how to think about things, everything.
Yeah, well, such a great point. You just brought up Evernote there at the end, and it just made me think like, okay, I still see people recommending Evernote. So I wanted to give it a try just to explore to see if there's anything good about it. And there's the one feature that they added, but it's not good enough in my opinion yet, because in general, the paradigm of using Evernote, like you say, it doesn't compare to Tana. Like Tana is so dynamic. Everything stands by itself. Everything can be referenced everywhere. So yeah, let's not get into a crazy tangent of Evernote. But my whole point with that is that Tana really brings a new way to think about things, and that how dynamic it is really powerful. I actually am curious to know, just in terms of your philosophy with organizing your notes, how do you keep track of things that you want to search later in Tana? Because if there's a bit of a, I don't know, let's call it not a weakness, but something that could still be improved in Tana. It's, in my opinion, search features. Obviously, search
Like
nodes are powerful.
the regular kind of old-fashioned
Yeah,
search.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, the normal Command S, Control S, just like, for instance, I'm a big fan of how Obsidian does it, because you open that window and you have a bunch of different toggles, different features, different parameters that you can put in there. Maybe even just filtering down by workspace. I remember that was available in Tana with just this symbol, the less than symbol, but I don't know if it's available anymore. So I'm just confused of if that feature went away. Tangent, I don't know if you know about that feature in particular. Do you know how to filter by workspace?
I don't is the short answer.
Yeah, no worries. Well, yeah, don't take my word for it if anyone is assuming that feature was removed. I'm not sure. But either way, the whole thing is like, yeah, this normal feature of just Control S, Control S, Command S, I think could be a lot more powerful. So I wonder how you work around that limitation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And like the very short answer of how I work around it is, and how I like kind of structure notes and everything is, I don't. I don't work around it, and I don't structure notes. And so I actually, I think there's some improvement that they could make in the regular search experience. However, I lean into that, and if I'm realizing that I'm trying to find something and I can't, that's a signal to me that, oh, well, why is that important to me? Why am I trying to find it? And why was I unable to find it using the system that I already had set up? I find that out, then I realize, okay, I just need to make a super tag, or I need to add a field to this existing tag. Or typically, actually, it's something more like, oh, I didn't tag this as a note. I should have tagged it, And so maybe that could be actually a weakness, that Tana is not quite as magical as it could be, because at some point it relies on the human doing something. And then, but then we get into a dangerous territory of like, what, do you make everything completely independent of what the human is doing? So yeah, I don't want to go down to that rabbit hole, maybe, but yeah, I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate just a little bit. Obviously, I love Tana, like everyone knows this, right? But let's just, just for the sake of conversation, even like, if Tana doesn't have the ability to always find the thing you need, unless you actually spend the time to organize everything with super text and so on, do you think it should have like those sort of features that it just makes it super effortless to find what you need? Or are you actually a big fan of having to do the super tags, have to manually sort things out for future Nick to find it later? What do you think there?
I think that the true answer is really a middle ground. If you forget to tag something, it should be easier to find it using just the simple search. Maybe applying a couple filters or something. And there should be improvements there. However, I also think that as a user, it's a good habit to develop, that if you ever have to search for something, even if they make it really easy, if you ever have to search for the same kind of thing more than twice, you should have a super tag or field or a new, more specific live query built somewhere for that use case.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, obviously, there's tons of advantages to having a very organized system. But I just wonder, as we move further and further into the world of AI, where technology, is just automated to heavy extents, do you see the future of technology still relying on manual organization of things? What do you think for note taking?
I think that there's a Pandora's box that AI has opened. And
Yeah.
in like 9 out of 10 industries or job roles or whatever, like 90% of what you're doing is going to be unnecessary very soon. Now, that's going to mean that there's going to be some new things that humans are still going to do. But then even those new things, 90% of those, the AI is going to start
Right.
automating and doing better than you could do. And so there's going to be a bit of a race going on there. And so that is kind of a pretext to saying that I think we're going to get to a point, especially let's narrow it down to PKM. We will get to a point that all of the things that we currently do to like manually track or tag or even taking notes, there's going to be like 90% of that we won't do anymore. But there's
Right.
always going to be that 10%. And the
Hmm.
people who know how to do that 10% really well, those are the people who are going to win, you know?
Right. I like that. I like that way of seeing it for sure. I guess that ties to a bit of a larger conversation about, let's just take the example of a job that is definitely going to be replaced little by little by AI, which is very debatable, but like programming. The more AI is able to write code for us, the less programmers are needed in society, right? Which is pretty crazy. Like I know about technology and I've been interested in like, like Linux stuff, just using the terminal for stuff. Like I've been a techie guy, but I never really took the time to become a programmer aside from like very fundamental things such as CSS, which is just for web. It's just very easy stuff, right? The stuff that I know. But then when it comes to actually like, okay, I want to create a mini app for myself. I want to do something quite advanced. In the past, I was like, do I really want to learn programming? Do I want to take the time? And now the answer has been like, oh, you're already a programmer, because it turns out that I asked ChatGPT, like, hey, write this code for me. It writes it for me. All I need to do is troubleshoot it and give it the errors that I get when I try to run it. And obviously it's a bit more complicated than that, but still, like, it's crazy how even programming goes away. So the question that ties to everything that we're talking about is like, is learning to program from scratch still useful? The same way that is being able to organize your notes and your personal knowledge management is still going to be useful the same way that programmers are going to be useful. What do you think?
So I made a tweet based on this, where it was a quote tweet of McKay Wrigley, and I'll get to the tweet in a minute, but there's kind of like 3 stages that I went through on this. So the first stage is, yeah, it used to be coal miners and everything like going to be out of jobs, but now you used to say learn to code. The AI can code. Like there's no reason for programmers anymore. That's stage 1.
Right.
Stage 2 is, and this is where McKay Wrigley was in that tweet that I quote tweeted. He's like, well, AI, yeah, sure, it's getting better and better. It's going to be able to code like entire apps in a week, or in a month.
Right.
It's going to be right there doing that. But people are still going to need to talk with the AI. And who's going to be better to talk with the AI, especially when it comes to like building apps and stuff? Who's going to be able to do that better than a programmer? Okay, stage 2. Stage 3 is, yeah, but still, that's only like a certain number of edge cases where you really need to know that deeply how to code and everything. And especially at that low level of programming. Like who actually writes in machine code in zeros and ones or assembly language or anything like that these days? There's a natural progression. However, there's always some people who operate at that level. It's not very many, but they are so valuable that they can just name their price for salaries. So those people will always exist. But they're going to be relatively small in number, and there's going to be so many other people who can leverage AI because of their unique things that they can bring to the table, just like programmers, which I think is super interesting and exciting. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
I like that a lot. I think it connects very well to note-taking, productivity, PKM, all this stuff, because in a way, like we're just comparing it to programming, I think is a very good example. There's going to be the person at the top who, as much as AI can even like automate itself and just like build its children AI and just like robots run the world and humans are needed. We are not there yet, and I don't think we'll be in our lifetime where like humans are needed. So for now, it's good to assume that there's gonna be someone at the top that is a human controlling things. And like you say, who's gonna be in the best position to be that person? Someone who has a good understanding, but more so than the nitty gritty, more so than like, oh, how do you write this function? How do you execute this thing? Whatever, is like someone who has a vision. So bringing it back to productivity and note taking, you need to be the visionary who understands what you want to get out of this. You're the one who sets the goals, who has a vision for where do I want this knowledge to take me in the future, and then AI is going to be the one that is going to take you there. So yeah, I think it links pretty well.
Yep, totally. Yeah, I think like you can understand how to communicate with the AI, the bots, the agents, assistants, whatever you call them. But, and that could be, programming really well. It could also be because I think that we are doing a really good job of replicating something like human intelligence in AI. That means if you understand how humans think and are incentivized and everything, like a psychologist, maybe you're going to be really good at communicating and giving orders to AIs and stuff. And okay, so this is really going into that tweet that I sent, but even go into like artisans, people who make things with their hands to a degree that is dependent on those things, whether it's plumbers or carpenters or whatever. There's something about having that sense that you cannot replicate as an AI. Even if an AI technically could give orders to a robot to, cut the pieces of wood and everything, I believe, at least for the foreseeable future, there's a sensory lack for anything that's AI that humans are going to need to be in the process at some point, somehow. And so whoever has that knowledge and that experience of working with their hands in those industries, and they know how to communicate, or they know how to scale what was previously unscalable before AI, things like that, those people are going to be rich, honestly.
Right. Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about how to survive AI. I'm not too scared. I mean, not to like be too mean to people, but people that do very manual stuff, not necessarily with their hands, like you say, there's still a value. And it's interesting how knowledge workers have been replaced faster by AI than people in trade jobs, right? Like the plumber, still there's no robot that can replace that job. So it's so interesting. But like, yeah, people that do. I mean, I heard this quote the other day, like, if you fear that AI will replace you, it probably will, right? So if you're already thinking about that and you're already afraid of it, it's probably because you do realize that your current job is very easy to automate, right? So I guess it all comes down to just going to the core fundamentals, like you said, psychology, just understanding the very deep things that make us human and the things that give us a vision to know how to instruct AI. So yeah, I broke it down into like 4, maybe 5 core skills. This YouTube video that I'm actually working on, but we have writing, which is the ability to think clearly. Obviously, AI can speed it up, but there's still a core of like the human element, the spirit of the thing that you write. Then we have speaking, which is your ability to convey ideas clearly and persuade others and so on. Then we have design, which is being able to make things aesthetic and beautiful, because obviously humans are attracted towards beauty and things that just look good. So it's just the packaging that you bring to maybe a website that you're building, just some art that you're, trying to convey a big even message. This can be ads, even YouTube thumbnails, anything like that, right? Like it's just a way in which you package what you have to say so that people are attracted towards it. And then we have technology, or technological literacy, which is the ability to be good with computers. And that's where AI comes in, because if you can master that one, then you can augment all of the other things in the respective fields, right? I had an extra one, and I don't know if this one fits very well, but it's your ability to learn, right? Because if you are good at letting information process into your brain and turning it into something useful, then that's a massive skill to have. But yeah, I'm giving your thoughts on all of that. I dropped a lot of stuff there.
So what you were saying got me thinking about what I was thinking about on my walk and really for the last year, about what can we do? What is, as humanity, as humans, what do we have to offer that AI can't do, or maybe someday won't be able to foresee, or something like that? And I realized that AI, all that it is, it's trained on data. What is that data? It's like content that we've put on the internet, or a bunch of books, articles, blogs, conversations, all sorts of things, mostly from the last 100 years, but maybe some older stuff too. But regardless, it's only certain things of reality that have been recorded or people chose to record at some point. There's so much that of reality that is not encoded in that training. What humans have been trained on at like kind of a genetic level through evolution is reality. So at some point, on some level, there's bound to be something that AI just, there's no training data. AI is not prepared to even conceptually handle what's being thrown at it. Whereas humans, there's probably things that we can't even imagine what we're capable of, but we're going to realize that there's things that are just in our DNA to be able to handle and move through that AI won't be able to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, it's really crazy to even think of innovation, of where humanity is going to end up in like a few hundred years, and whether AI can take us there without our help while building back, or does that sort of innovation and that sort of next level of human evolution requires a human intellect and requires a human spirit, essentially, right? And I mean, not to get too crazy onto like the whole religion side of things, but AI will never have a soul of any sort, right? Like there's whether people believe or not.
That's
like,
what I've been asking myself. That's where it leads eventually. I don't know if you saw, I think it's called Foundation. There's a series that's based on some books, but in the show, there's this religious organization or cult or whatever, but they don't believe that clones, for instance, have souls. And yet that's how like the leadership of the royalty has been cloned for hundreds of years, from this one Cleon the First or something. First watching that show, I was like, well, that's ridiculous. But then like, what's the difference between a clone and AI? Can AI have a soul? Like, if we can and AI can't, why is that really? Like, of course, like if you're religious, because God gave it to us. Okay, but still, how do you know God didn't give it to AI? Like, how do we know? And I don't know how to answer that.
Amazing question. And that just triggered this really crazy concept of like, okay, how far can we extend human life? Let's say, just for the sake of pushing it, 200 years, right? Maybe the interesting thing is that, okay, maybe God didn't intend that to happen, so it's just been through human intellect that we've extended life. Maybe God only gives us like 80 or 100 years, but beyond that, that's still a soul, right? So at what point do we become soulless humans if we live forever? And that ties a lot to like, can we transfer that soul into, if you replace every single organ, even the brain of a human, does the soul remain? So where's the soul, and can AI ever have a soul? those are really crazy questions.
Yeah, this is reminding me. This is going in directions that I had no idea we were gonna go. But there's a movie. I think Will Smith was in it. There was some famous actor. It was one of those movies that you don't even remember exists. But they had robots, and they were able to transfer human consciousnesses, and they uploaded this one guy and then downloaded him into this robot. And when he woke up, he almost immediately started smashing his own face in, trying to delete himself, because you're used to having sensory organs, your skin, nerves, everything, and none of that. Suddenly this guy woke up in this foreign body, and none of that aligned with what's supposed to exist. And it drove him immediately insane. And it was an otherwise terrible movie, but that was a brilliant moment in it.
That's crazy, man. Yeah. Crazy stuff. I mean, yeah, like the whole question of AI, obviously we're going into like very abstract territory, and this is super interesting for me to talk. But just tying it back to, we always have to bring it back to Tana and stuff like that, because that's what people are here for. So I just wonder, just bringing it back to the knowledge management side of things. Yeah, like how what is the spirit of our knowledge, right? What is the human element that AI can replicate, and how can we double down on that? Because if we just build systems of things that are very easily going to be replaced by AI in the future, it does make you question how much you want to actually invest time on that, you
Hmm.
know? So, what would you say are the kind of like key elements that bring soul to the notes that you take? Like, what is a key aspect that is irreplaceable, or at least
Hmm.
in the foreseeable future, irreplaceable according to you?
I think this gets to the distinction between knowledge and wisdom. In data science, there's the kind of progression of you've got data, you've got information, you've got knowledge, and then they tack on this wisdom thing. And people have trouble saying like, okay, but what is the difference there? And I think for me, the difference is like knowledge, you can receive a bunch of facts and stuff. You can
Right.
say like, well, like the rate of this in city X is, 56% or something. But what's wisdom? Is it just a collection of knowledge? I think wisdom is actually something that you accumulate through experience. And that is how you can have a spirit in your notes, so to speak, because you are experiencing things and there's something about you in the notes rather than just a mere collection of facts, of datum.
I like that a lot. This reminds me of Alex Ramosi, the entrepreneur. Like, yeah, I listened to a lot of his stuff, read his books, and he has this really nice definition for intelligence, which I think is tied down pretty nicely to what you said. So he says intelligence is speed of learning,
Hmm.
right? So depending on how fast you learn, you're either smarter or dumber, right?
Hmm.
And then he says, obviously, now we need to define what does learning mean. And the way that he defines it, I find very interesting. He says learning is same conditions, new behavior. So if something keeps happening, do you learn from it, right? Let's just come up with the example of, I don't know, like a kid that is in the bicycle and he falls, right? And if he's smart, he realizes, oh, I just realized that I'm accidentally pedaling back, right?
Hmm.
Backwards. So that's what's stopping the bicycle at some point. So if he's smart, he'll be like, okay, I won't do that again. Therefore, I know that I always got to
Hmm.
pedal forward. I got to do certain things, hold these like that, and so on, right? So if he learns in the first try after the first failure, then he's fast at learning, which according to this definition, he's a smart. He's just smart. He's intelligent.
Hmm.
So it seems related to this idea of what makes us human. Wisdom is almost like the human experience. Is knowledge plus human experience equal wisdom? Something like that. I don't know. What do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah. Yeah, that reminds me going back to Twitter again actually for a completely
Yeah.
different reason. I saw this guy, he had a tweet and it was this little puzzle of like kind of math and probability, and there were four possible answers, and the way I got the right answer, but not because I understood precisely what to do and how to do all the math. Although I worked it out after the fact. I was like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, I got it right." But I got the right answer initially because of, I think, what I would call wisdom, kind of. And it was like, okay, so it's not going to be either of the two things that look like the obvious choice. It's not going to be this other thing. I'm going to go with this thing that just feels wrong to me, but could theoretically be right. And that's
Right.
so I didn't make the decision based on any information or knowledge that I had, really. It's just through learned experience. Like, I know I'm going to go with option B there.
Yeah, like intuition, right? Like an instinct.
Yeah, except I wonder, I think maybe instinct comes from like genetics, like you're born with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm not making a true distinction there, but I think for me, instinct sounds like I jump automatically because there's a scary noise or something. Whereas wisdom
Right.
is like you hear a noise like that, you don't go in that direction. It's more of a conscious thing. That's how I'm distinguishing, I guess.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's crazy because at the end of the day, humans, we are programmed by evolution and genetics, which does it really make us that different from machines that are programmed by code instead
Mm.
of genes is code, But yeah, there's definitely something special about humans. I mean, there has to be. At the end of the day, we are the ones that created AI. So, I mean, that's crazy. Like, it's a whole rabbit hole for sure.
Yeah. Well, and also like the things that are our weak points are also our strong points because like, okay, yeah, a machine, maybe it doesn't need to eat and everything. And AI is just, it can work tirelessly. It doesn't need to sleep and everything. But like the fact that we are fragile creatures actually can be a huge benefit because it keeps us on our game. And because we're biological creatures and our evolution is so slow, it takes millions or billions of years. Well, guess what? The AI has only existed for 5 years and is only trained on data that has existed for 80 years or whatever. But our training data is literally billions of years. And so we have a much firmer foundation. It's a slower progression, and it feels like we're getting outpaced out of existence, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Whether because of evolution or because of God, I think there's something else going on with us that we don't understand and is kind of a superpower. Okay, this has nothing to do with Tana.
It's fine. If people made it this far, it means they're enjoying it, so it's fine. So, one thing that you just made me realize crazy is that we have something to lose versus a robot like AI doesn't, right? Are you a fan of the Batman films, Christopher Nolan's?
Yes.
Of course. Okay, so Dark Knight Rises. Okay, if you haven't seen it, cover your ears for like the next minute. So the third film, The Dark Knight Rises, he's trying to get out of this hole, right? Like there's a hole in the ground and people have been trapped there for who knows how long, right? And he's trying to leave. And he's training, he's strong, he obviously has ability, but there's something that holds him back. And what's holding him back is that he's got nothing real to lose, because if you fall trying to climb, there's a rope that catches you and you leave. So the trick was to do it without rope, right? So that is the thing about humans. AI doesn't have anything to lose. We got so much to lose. We're mortals and we care about things deeply. So that's our superpower. Like you say, it is what really causes us to die, and is what causes us to feel sorrow for losing people and so on. But it's also our superpower that makes us wise and meaningful. Nice. Okay, yeah. Shall we tie it back? Do you have any Tana related stuff you want to close it with? Any ideas?
Well, I guess I can kind of tie it back to AI in Tana because the new release node that they released yesterday, one of the things that is listed there is OpenLink now works with Mail2 and other custom protocols, meaning that you can now perhaps, like we were talking about notifications in Tana, we could build our own notification system by saying, hey, whenever I apply this tag, send an email to Santi with a summary or something.
Right. Okay, that's really cool. So this is a feature inside of commands, right? So you can add commands to automate things.
Yeah.
You can do it to emails and stuff like that. That's really cool. I like that one. Yeah. I mean, next episode, I would definitely like to bring a lot more the topic of commands and just running things in sequence. That's something I've been playing. But yeah, I think that's good for next episode.
Cool. Totally. Yeah. And, the other thing is I noticed the last few releases, there's been a lot of stuff for former Rome users. And it's almost as if they've been listening to us and noticing they talk about Rome every time. Let's push this stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, there's something really cool about the way Rome did things in terms of like the impact they had, almost like as a mini cult. I don't know if you heard, but it was like hashtag Rome cult, right? Like they were very dedicated.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Tana wants to go there, but I'm pretty happy to kind of like push this a little into people becoming higher, like crazier fans of Tana. We are the first Tana podcast, as far as I know, so that's pretty cool. Like, hopefully we're pushing a bit more of that culture inside of Tana to really advocate for your tools. So without being cultish and so on. But yeah, that's something that I think Rome, even though it's debatable and controversial, I did appreciate the very strong community that was forming there.
Yeah, totally. And I think there is a natural progression in like maybe Rome is kind of like the gateway drug to Tana.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, as much as I just praise Rome, there's no reason to use Rome when 10x is Like it has zero advantages over Tana at the moment. I don't know if
Yeah.
you disagree. What do you think?
I think it has one advantage. It's the having the network, the graph of all of your knowledge. However, having said that, I didn't really use it when I was in Rome, so maybe it's not really a true like benefit or like, tick in the pro column. It's just like it sounds so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, back in Obsidian, when I was using it heavily, like that was the biggest appeal. And the first time I ever saw a graph like that, like in a previous tool, I do remember that feeling. I was like, wow, I can now see how everything connects. And
Yeah.
I think I said, Mom, check this out. Like, look, these are all the nodes I've been talking about. You can see them connect. So I think it's more of like an emotional thing to just see that. And it's a gimmick, almost like it's just a cool thing to happen. Yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of usability, it's zero usable.
Yeah.
Like it has zero benefits.
I think the graph itself is super important, but I don't think like having the visual is less important. I'm not really discovering anything new by looking at that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. I agree.
Cool. Yeah. Do we want to warn people about how we're changing up the format of what we're doing, or?
Yeah, quickly, just in case. So yeah, like we are gonna try to just do more of these podcasts that we're doing right here for YouTube directly. We'll figure out the details of that, but yeah, we'll be doing it quite a lot in Twitter Spaces. So we're gonna play with some other formats. We'll let you know. So if you're checking this out on YouTube or you're part of our community, you'll hear our updates out there. So yeah, join our free community as well. That's where you can hear more about us. But yeah, we might be playing with the format a little bit, but the podcast will continue. So that's that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I got nothing else that I really wanted to talk about.
Okay, so that wraps it up. Join our community. You'll find that in the description. Follow us on Twitter for more updates. And yeah, excited to keep doing this and hope you enjoyed this one. We'll talk soon.
Bye, Tana people.